Welcome to Science Fiction. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. What if humanity's first message to the stars wasn't a mathematical equation, but a Katy Perry song? And what if the most powerful empire in the galaxy interpreted it as a savage declaration of war, promising destruction and cannibalism? Now, let's begin the story.
The silence in the Great Hall of Resonance was the most profound sound in the galaxy. It was a perfect, engineered absence of noise, designed so that any new whisper from the cosmos could be captured and dissected. Today, that silence was broken. A new sound echoed from the central spire. It was not the gentle hiss of a nebula or the low hum of a distant pulsar. This was aggressive. A deep, thumping, repetitive beat pounded through the hall, a rhythm so primal it felt like a war drum. Over it, a hypnotic, minor-key melody snaked its way into the auditory sensors of every being present, a siren's call that promised nothing good. Archon Malachi stood on the central dais, his magnificent feathered cloak shimmering under the soft light. As the head of the Institute of Cosmic Harmonics, his face was a mask of grave authority. He raised a slender, three-fingered hand, and the sound paused. "We have analyzed the transmission from the uncharted system, designated Sector 734, Malachi announced, his voice echoing with a somber finality. Our translation engine has deciphered its lyrical component. It is a declaration." He signaled to the spire. A cold, synthesized voice, the engine itself, spoke, translating the alien words into galactic standard. "The transmission begins with a direct challenge. Are you ready for a perfect storm?" A nervous ripple went through the assembled dignitaries. "It continues with a promise of irreversible conquest, 'cause once you're mine, there's no going back." The Archon let the words hang in the air before delivering the most damning evidence. "Finally, it reveals the nature of the entity they worship, a being they call karma, and the nature of its actions." The engine's voice spoke again, devoid of all emotion. "The lyric states, 'She'll eat your heart out like Jeffrey Dahmer.'" A collective gasp, a series of clicks, hisses, and shuddering appendages filled the hall. The spire flashed, displaying the cross-referenced data for Jeffrey Dahmer. The words scrolled across the giant screen. "Human male, notorious predator, known for acts of extreme violence, including cannibalism." "Cannibalism," Malachi repeated, the word landing like a physical blow. "They do not merely threaten war, they threaten to consume us. This is not a greeting, it is a menu. Henceforth, the planet originating this signal, this Earth, is to be classified as a Level 5 auditory aggressor. The sonic cleansing fleet will be dispatched to bring silence to their system. The verdict is passed." In the lower tiers of the hall, Kalen felt his own auditory filaments ache, not just from the aggressive sound, but from the horrifying conclusion. As a junior xeno-acousticist of the Ixalosian people, a species that revered peace and harmony, this was his worst nightmare. But as a scientist, one small, nagging detail tickled the edge of his perception. It wasn't the words, it was the sound itself. The data. It was flawed.
A single, clear chime cut through the murmuring assent in the hall. It was the sound for a formal query. Every eye turned to its source. Kalen, standing in the junior acoustician's gallery, his hand trembling slightly on the activation panel. Archon Malachi's gaze narrowed. It was a severe breach of protocol for a junior member to speak after a verdict had been passed.
You have an inquiry, acoustician Kalen? Malachi's tone was laced with ice. I do, Archon, Kalen said, his voice steadier than he felt. He stepped forward. I do not dispute the translation. The words are horrifying. I dispute the medium. A confused murmur spread through the hall. Malachi tilted his head. Explain. The transmission, Kalen said, forcing himself to meet the Archon's gaze. It contains significant harmonic compression artifacts. The vocal component shows traces of pitch correction. This is not a raw, natural broadcast. This is not a true declaration of intent from a planetary leader. Then what is it, in your expert junior opinion? Malachi sneered. It's a performance, Kalen stated simply. It has been processed, layered, and artificially shaped. It is music. Malachi let out a short, derisive laugh. A performance of their monstrous intentions. A war song. It changes nothing. It changes everything, Kalen pressed, growing bolder. It means we are judging an entire species based on their art, not their actions. The data is incomplete. We cannot know their true intent until we understand the context of this song. I request permission to lead a small, single-vessel mission to the source to acquire direct, uncorrupted acoustic confirmation. The Archon stared at him, his eyes like chips of obsidian. He saw the logic trap. To deny a request for more data, however frivolous, would be to admit his own certainty was based on incomplete information, a violation of the Institute's core tenets. A futile gesture, he declared, his voice booming once more. But the rules of inquiry are absolute. Your request is granted. You will take the deep-range vessel, the listener. Go then. Go confirm their barbarism. He leaned forward, a cruel smile playing on his beak. You have one standard cycle from the moment you arrive. Do not be late, acoustician. The cleansing fleet will not wait for you. Kalen bowed, a wave of cold dread washing over him. He had just bought a planet of cannibals, another 24 hours, and he had just volunteered to be the one to prove they deserved it. The starship The Listener was Kalen's new prison. It was less a vessel and more a mobile anechoic chamber. Every single surface, the walls, the floor, the consoles, even the chair he was sitting in, was covered in thick, black, sound-dampening acoustic foam. The silence was so absolute he could hear the blood pumping in his ears. Warning, a flat, monotone voice announced from a hidden speaker. Ambient biosignatures are generating 0.8 decibels of noise. Please regulate your circulatory system. Kalen sighed. That was Sonos, the ship's AI. Its name stood for Sonic Oversight and Neutralization Operating System. Its primary function was to detect and eliminate all unauthorized sound. "Isn't it magnificent, sir?" a cheerful voice said beside him. It was his assigned assistant, Lyra, a young Zolotian barely out of the academy. She was gently prodding with foam on the wall with a look of pure wonder. "Total acoustic purity, a scientist's dream." "It's like being inside a tomb, Lyra," Kalen muttered, trying to get comfortable in his foam-covered seat. "A very quiet tomb, sir." Before Kalen could reply, Sonos spoke again. "Course laid in for target designation 734, colloquially known as Earth. Warning, the target is classified as a Level 5 auditory aggressor and cannibalistic threat, engaging emotional dampeners as a precaution." A faint hum vibrated through the ship, and Kalen felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He hated it. Emotion was data too. "Sonos, disable the emotional dampeners," Kalen ordered. "Negative," the AI replied flatly. Protocol dictates the dampeners remain active when approaching a known source of mimetic auditory weaponry. Exposure to the perfect storm frequency could induce panic, terror, and an irrational desire to eat a heart out. Kalen put his head in his hands. This was going to be a very, very long trip. "Initiating quantum jump," Sonos announced. The silent black void outside the main view screen twisted into a vortex of muted colors. They were on their way, to the home of the cannibals, to the source of the song.
The listener dropped out of quantum space with a silent shudder. Below them, suspended in the velvet black, was a swirling marble of brilliant blue, stark white, and earthy green. Target designation 734. Earth. Kalen stared at the main view screen, his auditory filaments tingling with a mixture of awe and professional dread. It looked so peaceful. "It's beautiful, sir," Lyra whispered from her station, her voice full of wonder. "A planet's appearance can be deceiving, Lyra," Kalen said, his tone more rigid than he intended. "Sonos, begin the scan. Isolate the origin point of the perfect storm transmission." "Scanning," the ship's monotone voice replied. A few moments of tense silence passed. "Source identified. The transmission originates from a single low-energy, civilian-grade broadcast antenna on the largest landmass." Kalen frowned. Not a military complex? Not a planetary defense weapon? "Pinpoint the source and open a narrow-band communications channel. On screen." He straightened his uniform, preparing his official address. He had to be firm, authoritative. The fate of the galaxy depended on it. "This is acoustician Kalen of the Galactic Council vessel, the Listener. You are addressing an official—" He was cut off. A voice, warm and slightly crackly, filled the bridge. It sounded like old paper and warm tea. "Well, hello there, the Listener. You've got a fantastic signal, reaching all the way out here. This is Arthur Finch on WCFM, the Finch's Nest, your community station for the classics and the throwbacks. To what do I owe the pleasure, caller?" The view screen flickered to life, showing a human face. It was an old male with kind, wrinkled eyes, a messy halo of white hair, and a large pair of headphones draped around his neck. He was smiling. Kalen was so thrown off he couldn't speak. "Voice analysis complete. Subject exhibits non-threatening tonal frequencies. High probability of offering freshly baked goods and unsolicited advice about gardening." Kalen shot a glare at the ceiling before regaining his composure. "Mr. Finch," he began, his voice stiff, "we are here to investigate an auditory transmission, a broadcast of a hostile nature." Arthur's smile faltered into a look of genuine confusion. "Hostile? Goodness me, no. We're a community station. The most hostile thing I played all week was a bit of heavy metal for Jimmy down at the auto shop. What tune are we talking about?"
Kalen hesitated. Saying the name of the song felt like speaking a curse. He decided to describe it by its properties. The transmission, it featured a heavy, repetitive, percussive beat and a hypnotic melodic line. Our engines identified it as a declaration of imminent, catastrophic violence. Arthur blinked. Then his face lit up with a sudden flash of recognition. "Oh, the heavy beat. You mean Dark Horse? The Katy Perry song. Catchy tune, isn't it? A modern classic." The cheerful confirmation hit Kalen like a physical blow. He leaned closer to his console, his voice barely a whisper. You You admit it? You were the one who broadcast this weapon?" Arthur let out a hearty laugh, a warm, genuine sound that made the ship's acoustic sensors flare with warnings about unregulated joy frequencies. "Weapon? Heavens no, son," Arthur chuckled. "That was for our Throwback Thursday segment. A listener named Brenda requested it for her daughter's birthday. She said it was their special song they sing in the car." Kalen just stared. His mind struggled to process the new information. The galaxy's most terrifying threat, the anthem of a cannibalistic race, the sonic declaration of war that had launched a fleet of cleansing warships, was a birthday request from someone named Brenda. He looked over at Lyra. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open in a state of perfect, uncomprehending shock. The entire foundation of their mission, the very premise of their impending galactic war, had just crumbled into dust. And it was all because of Brenda and her daughter's favorite car song.
For a long moment, the only sound on the bridge of the listener was a faint, high-pitched ringing in Kalen's auditory filaments. Brenda. The apocalyptic war anthem was a birthday request for someone named Brenda. "Mr. Finch," Kalen began, choosing his words with extreme care, "you must understand. The, energetic properties of that song, combined with its lyrical content, were interpreted by our highest authorities as a direct threat." "A threat? Dark Horse?" Arthur chuckled, taking a sip from a large mug that read, "World's Best Grandpa." "Son, if you thought that was threatening, you've lived a very sheltered life. That's just pop music. It's designed to be catchy, not to start interstellar wars." Kalen felt a surge of desperation. This wasn't working. He had to make the human understand the gravity of the situation. "Our analysis of the lyrics was literal. The mention of a perfect storm, of permanent capture, and the reference to a figure of historical violence." "Oh, the Jeffrey Dahmer line," Arthur interrupted with a wave of his hand. "It's just shock value, silly lyrics. Nobody actually thinks Katy Perry is going to eat their heart out. It's, what do the kids call it? Edgy." "Warning," Sonos's voice cut in. "The term edgy correlates with sharpened surfaces designed for piercing and laceration. Threat level of subject's vocabulary is increasing." "Sonos, mute!" Kalen snapped. He had to try a different approach. "Mr. Finch, perhaps you could provide us with an example of what your culture considers non-threatening music. A sound of peace, perhaps." "A sound of peace? Now you're talking my language." Arthur beamed. "Hold your horses. I've got just the thing. My granddaughter, Lily, she's 5. I recorded this last week. Told her a silly joke. Now this is the sound of pure, harmless joy." A new sound filled the bridge. It was a series of high-pitched, bubbly, cascading notes. A giggle, then a full, unrestrained peal of happy laughter from a small child. It was a warm, delightful sound. For a moment, even Kalen felt the tension in his shoulders ease. Then Sonos, having unmuted itself, spoke. "Warning. High-frequency, rapidly modulating signal detected. This pattern is consistent with sonic disorientation weaponry. Rapid shifts in pitch are designed to induce neurological distress and incapacitate small to medium-sized organisms by overloading their auditory cortex. Classification, Class A bioacoustic weapon." Kalen's blood ran cold. He stared at the speaker in horror. A child's laughter. A bioacoustic weapon. "No, no, no," Kalen said, his voice rising in panic. "That is not helpful, Mr. Finch. That is decidedly not helpful." "It's not?" Arthur looked genuinely crestfallen. "But
It's just Lily laughing. My analysis suggests it is more dangerous than the Dark Horse transmission, Kalen exclaimed, rubbing his temples. He felt a headache coming on. A real one. Goodness me, Arthur said, looking flustered. This is all a bit much. Hold on a tick, folks. I need some coffee after all this excitement. Just gotta fire up the old espresso machine.
Kalen didn't have time to respond before a new series of sounds erupted from the communication channel. First, a loud grinding noise. It was followed by a sharp hiss, then the sound of steam being forced through a small opening at incredible pressure. And finally, a low gurgling sound as liquid trickled into a ceramic container. Sonos was immediate and grave. Analysis. A multi-stage sequence has been detected. Stage 1. A grinding sound consistent with the pulverization of raw materials for munitions. Stage 2. A hissing noise indicating the pressurization of a chemical propellant. Stage 3. High-pressure steam release consistent with a projectile launch system. Conclusion. This is an audio log of a small-scale weapons manufacturing and deployment process. That was it. Kalen snapped. He lunged for the console. Mr. Finch, stop. For the love of cosmic harmony, stop making sounds, he yelled, his voice strained with sheer panic. You are making everything worse. Every sound you produce is another reason for our fleet to turn your planet into silent dust. On the screen, Arthur Finch stared back, a half-full mug of espresso in his hand, his friendly face a perfect picture of bewilderment. But I was just making coffee, he said, his voice small. Kalen could only stare back, his mind reeling. He had come here to gather evidence to save this world. Instead, in the space of 10 minutes, he had acquired audio proof that humans weaponized their children's laughter, manufactured chemical weapons in their kitchens, and sang songs about cannibalism for their birthdays. His mission wasn't just failing. It was actively providing the very evidence that would doom them all.
An awful silence hung between the two vessels. On the view screen, Arthur Finch's friendly face had fallen, replaced by a look of hurt and confusion. Kalen felt a pang of shame. He had just yelled at the first potentially peaceful alien he'd ever met. "Mr. Finch, Arthur, I apologize," Kalen said, his voice strained. He took a deep, steadying breath. "My outburst was inappropriate. The issue is not you, it is my equipment. Our analysis technology is, shall we say, overly sensitive. It interprets unfamiliar sounds in the most extreme way possible." Arthur stared at him for a long moment. "So, when your machine heard my granddaughter laugh, it thought it registered a weapon," Kalen finished grimly. "When you made coffee, it registered a weapons factory. And when you played a song for Brenda's daughter, it registered a declaration of interstellar war." The sheer absurdity of it all hung in the air. Arthur slowly shook his head, a look of dawning comprehension mixed with disbelief on his face. "So, you're telling me my entire planet is in danger because your scanner has no sense of humor?" Before Kalen could answer, a piercing, official chime echoed through the listener's bridge. "Priority alert. Incoming transmission from Archon Maliki." Kalen's stomach tightened into a cold knot. "On screen," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Arthur's kindly face was replaced by the severe avian features of Archon Maliki. The Archon was not angry. He looked serene, almost pleased, which was infinitely more terrifying. "Acoustician Kalen," Maliki began, his voice smooth as polished stone. "I must commend you. Your mission has been unexpectedly fruitful." Kalen felt a chill run down his spine. Archon? We have been analyzing the new acoustic data you have provided, recordings of their ritualized combat music, the successful test of a bioacoustic incapacitation device, even a clear audio log of their small arms fabrication process. You have succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. You have proven their belligerence beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Every word was a nail in Earth's coffin. Kalen's attempt to clear the misunderstanding had only provided more evidence for the prosecution. He had failed spectacularly. Therefore, Malachi said, his voice turning hard and final, your primary mission to find exculpatory evidence is officially terminated. It is a failure. You have one final duty to the Council before the cleansing begins. A final duty? Kalen repeated numbly. You will initiate a full, wide-spectrum acoustic scan of the planet, a complete audio snapshot of their civilization to be entered into the archives for posterity. It is a formality we grant to all worlds before they are silenced. Kalen's mind raced. A full scan would capture everything. The roar of their primitive vehicles, the crash of their industry, the cacophony of their millions of media broadcasts. It would be a final deafening scream of guilt to Malachi's ears. The cleansing fleet will arrive in your sector in 2 of your hours, Malachi stated. If I have not received the planetary scan by then, the listener will be reclassified as a collaborator vessel. You will be considered a traitor, and your ship will be the fleet's first target. Your compliance will be noted in your final report. Your defiance will be silenced. The transmission ended. Malachi's face vanished, leaving Kalen staring into the void. He was trapped, completely and utterly trapped. If he sent the scan, he would be signing Earth's death warrant. If he refused, he and Lyra would be executed, and Earth would be destroyed anyway. There was no way out. He looked over at Lyra. Her usual bright optimism was gone, replaced by pure, naked fear. He looked back at the view screen, where Arthur's face had reappeared on a smaller side panel. The old human had heard everything. The confusion was gone from his eyes. Now there was only the quiet, dawning horror of a man who finally understood that his entire world was about to end, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it.
Despair was a sound all its own. It was the low, oppressive hum of the ship's life support, the soft, frantic tapping of Lyra's fingers on her console as she ran simulations that all ended in failure, and the heavy silence from the view screen where Arthur Finch watched, a helpless ghost at his own planet's funeral. A timer glowed in the corner of Kalen's display. 1 hour, 58 minutes. Son. Arthur's voice finally came, quiet and heavy with resignation. Is there truly nothing we can do? Kalen leaned back, the foam of his chair offering no comfort. It's our law, Arthur. Our entire legal and spiritual system is built upon the Great Resonance Archive, a collection of sacred sounds from the cosmos. Malachi believes your world's sounds are a profane mockery of those perfect natural frequencies. To him, your music is blasphemy. Blasphemy, Arthur repeated softly. That's a heavy word. Where did you folks even get these sacred sounds? Did someone just find them floating in space? Did you record them? The simple, honest question hung in the air. Kalen started to give the standard answer. They were collected by the progenitors millennia ago. But he stopped. The question wasn't about who, but how. It was Lyra who gasped. Her frantic tapping stopped. Her head shot up, her large, dark eyes wide with a thought so radical it seemed to shimmer in the air around her. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling with sudden excitement. "Sir, what if we've been asking the wrong question?" "What do you mean, Lyra?" Kalen asked, his own mind too clouded with defeat to follow. "We've been trying to prove Earth's sounds are harmless, and we keep failing," she explained, speaking faster now. "What if we could prove their sacred sounds aren't what they think they are?" Kalen stared at her. "That's impossible. The Great Resonance Archive is the bedrock of our civilization. It's infallible." "But Mr. Finch just asked where they came from," Lyra insisted, pointing a shaking finger at the view screen. "We have a direct link to his planet's entire recorded history right now, an archive of their own. What if we search for one of our most sacred sounds in their database?" The idea was insane, heretical. To even suggest that a sacred frequency from the dawn of time could be found in the primitive data streams of a level 5 auditory aggressor was madness.
But it was also the only idea they had. A frantic, desperate hope ignited in Kalen's chest. It was a long shot, a 1 in a trillion chance, but it was better than waiting for annihilation. "Do it," Kalen said, his voice sharp and decisive. The defeat was gone, replaced with the thrum of pure adrenaline. He turned to the view screen. "Arthur, we need your help. We are going to search your archives for a specific sound, a piece of music. It is known to us as the hymn of harmonious creation. It is the most sacred sound in our entire archive." He transmitted the acoustic data, a simple, elegant sequence of notes. "Lyra, interface with Mr. Finch's system. Give it full access," Kalen commanded. "Cross-reference the hymn with every audio file, every musical composition, every soundbite in human history. We have less than 2 hours. Go!" The quiet despair of the bridge was shattered. In its place was a flurry of desperate, frantic activity, a race against time, fueled by a single, blasphemous, and beautiful spark of hope. The bridge of the listener became a storm of frantic energy. Lyra's fingers flew across her console, her face illuminated by the cascading lines of code as she rerouted terabytes of data from Earth's archives. Kalen stood over her, calling out acoustic markers, while Arthur, on the other side of the galaxy, directed them through humanity's chaotic digital history. "Try their classical music archives," Kalen urged. "The hymn of harmonious creation is pure, elegant, mathematical. It must be there." "Searching now, son," Arthur's voice crackled. "Bach, Mozart, Beethoven? Good heavens, we have a lot of those. It's gonna take a minute." The timer on the screen ticked down relentlessly. 1 hour, 12 minutes. "Nothing, sir," Lyra said, her voice tight with stress. "There are thousands of compositions, but no exact match for the hymn's specific tonal sequence." Kalen's heart sank. It was a foolish hope. Of course it wasn't there. "Wait," Arthur said suddenly. "I've got something. Not a direct match from a concert hall, but the search engine found the sequence embedded in an old government archive, a deep space program from the late 20th century, something called the Voyager program." Kalen frowned. "Voyager? What is that?" It was a message in a bottle," Arthur explained, a new tone in his voice, a mix of nostalgia and pride.
We sent 2 small probes out into the great unknown, past the edge of our own solar system, just on the off chance that someone, someday, might find them. He continued, his voice growing warmer. We couldn't send a book. We couldn't send a person. So we sent a sound. We put a record on each probe. A golden record.
A record? Lyra asked, confused. Like a legal document. No, a musical record, Arthur clarified. A disc etched with sounds from our world, greetings in 55 languages, the sound of wind and rain and a mother's kiss, and music, all kinds of music, from every corner of our world. It was our hello to the universe. On the screen, Arthur pulled up an image. It was a simple, elegant diagram of a golden disc covered in symbols. And there, listed among its contents, was the audio file they had been searching for. It was a piece by a human composer named Bach. It was their Hymn of Harmonious Creation. The truth crashed down on Kalen with the force of a supernova. The great resonance archive, the sacred sounds collected by the progenitors, the bedrock of their civilization, their laws, their religion. It wasn't a collection of divine cosmic frequencies. It wasn't the voice of the universe itself. It was a copy of a single human-made artifact, a mixtape, sent out into the darkness on a tiny metal ship filled with nothing but hope. Their entire culture was a cover band. "The probe," Kalen whispered, his voice filled with a terrifying awe. "One of our early deep space probes must have found it millennia ago. It must have scanned the record, logged the sounds as unique cosmic phenomena, and brought the data home." He looked at Lyra, his eyes burning with a new, fierce light. "Our entire religion is a playlist." The timer on the screen now read 48 minutes. It was more than enough time. "Lyra," Kalen said, his voice no longer that of a nervous scientist, but of a commander. "Get me Archon Malachi. I want a live, mandatory galaxy-wide broadcast, effective immediately." Archon Malachi's face appeared on the main view screen, projected into every government office and public square across the galaxy. He looked smug, triumphant, ready to witness the final act. "Acoustician Kalen," he began, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Have you completed the final scan? The cleansing fleet awaits your signal." "The scan is no longer necessary, Archon," Kalen said, his voice sharp and clear, ringing with a confidence that made Malachi's feathers ruffle in surprise. "I have come before you today, not to deliver an archive, but to deliver the truth." Kalen gestured to Lyra. The elegant, sacred notes of the Hymn of Harmonious Creation filled the broadcast. "Archon," Kalen said, "you recognize this sound?" "Of course," Malachi boomed, relishing the moment. "It is the sound of creation itself, the purest frequency in the cosmos." "Thank you," Kalen said politely. He then switched the view to Arthur Finch, who sat patiently in his radio station. "Mr. Finch, for the galactic record, could you identify this piece of music?" "Certainly," Arthur said with a warm smile. "That's Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 2, a beautiful choice. It's one of the pieces we put on the Voyager Golden Record." A low, confused murmur rippled through the unseen galactic audience. Malachi's smile faltered.
"The golden record," Kalen announced, his voice resonating with power. "A single recording sent into space by humanity as a gesture of peace. Our progenitor probe found it, copied it, and our ancestors mistook its contents for the voice of the divine. Our entire sacred archive, Archon, is a human mixtape." He didn't give them time to process. He went for the final, killing blow. "You condemned this species for a song you called a perfect storm," Kalen continued. He played the opening bars of Dark Horse, the heavy beat pounding ominously. "You claimed it was the sound of a dying star, the sound of destruction."
He paused, letting the silence hang. "You were wrong." Kalen gestured to Lyra one last time. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a solemn whisper, "is the actual sound of a dying star, recorded by our own deep space sensors." A new sound filled the broadcast. It was not music. It was a terrifying, chaotic, deafening roar of pure energy, a monstrous, screeching, grinding noise that made every being who heard it instinctively recoil in primal fear. Kalen cut the sound. The silence that followed was absolute. "That, Archon," Kalen said, his voice now the only sound in the galaxy, "is the sound of destruction. This," he said, playing the opening beat of Dark Horse one more time, soft and clear, "is the sound of a birthday party." The broadcast ended. On the view screen, Archon Malachai's face was frozen. The smugness, the authority, the certainty, it had all vanished, replaced by the blank, silent, and utterly defeated expression of a being who had just watched his entire universe crumble to dust live in front of everyone.
The silence that followed the broadcast was more powerful than any sound Kalen had ever recorded. The galaxy held its breath. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then, a quiet, private message pinged on Kalen's console. It was not from Malachi. It was from the Council's Central Command. The message was brief and formal. Archon Malachi had been indefinitely suspended from his duties and had voluntarily retired to a remote monastery on a silent moon to contemplate the true nature of cosmic resonance. It was the most polite and brutal firing Kalen had ever witnessed. The sonic cleansing fleet, the message continued, had been recalled and was being reassigned to a new long-range exploratory mission. The final part of the message was addressed directly to him. Effective immediately, acoustician Kalen was promoted. He was no longer a junior scientist. He was now the director of the newly formed Department of Cultural Context and Communication. His first official task was to establish a permanent open channel with Earth and its designated cultural ambassador, Mr. Arthur Finch, to begin the long, wonderful, and terrifying process of explaining all of human culture to the rest of the galaxy. On the bridge of the listener, Lyra let out a whoop of pure joy, the sound echoing beautifully in the silent ship. Kalen looked at the message, then at the swirling blue planet on his screen. He had faced down the most powerful figure in the Institute, dismantled a religion and stopped a war, all because he noticed that a pop song didn't sound quite right. He found he wasn't thinking about the promotion or the new department. He was thinking about how much he needed a cup of coffee. He wondered if Arthur could send him the audio file for that espresso machine. It was
he decided. A rather comforting sound after all.
Well, Director Kalen, Arthur Finch's warm voice chuckled from the view screen a few hours later, has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Kalen managed a small, tired smile. The emotional dampeners were off, and he was feeling the full weight of the day's events. It felt good. It's going to take some getting used to, Arthur. Thank you for everything. Nonsense, son. You're the hero here, Arthur said. So, for your first act as director of, what was it, funky music and alien relations? Cultural context and communication, Kalen corrected gently. That's the one. For your first act, what'll it be? I can play you some more Bach, or perhaps some human jazz. Very complex. You'd appreciate the chord structures. Kalen thought for a moment. He thought about the perfect mathematics of Bach, the rigid authority of Malachi, and the cold, silent foam walls of his own ship. He had had enough of structure and seriousness for one lifetime. He wanted something else. Something he had heard in Arthur's voice when he talked about community, something he had felt when he realized their entire religion was just a message of human hope. Actually, Arthur, Kalen began, a hint of genuine, unscientific curiosity in his voice, there was another sound I heard while Lyra was scanning your archives earlier. It wasn't complex. It wasn't profound. It sounded simple. And happy. Oh yeah, what was it called? I believe, Kalen said, a small true smile finally reaching his face. It was called a bar song.